Okay, it is 4 o'clock. I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. And roll call. We're just missing Maribel, who had her baby this week. Are there any oral communications?
None.
Okay, moving right along to the approval of minutes. And trustees, feel free to review, and if and when ready, if someone would like to make a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we're going to manually vote as our system is down, so Francis?
Yes.
All in favor? Yeah, you want to do all in favor. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And it is approved 4-0.
Okay, and then next up, current business, we'll move on to our updates from the city, presented by Robert.
All right. Thank you, everyone. The big major thing that happened since our last meeting was the grand reopening of our main library location. We had the ribbon cutting on Saturday, August 1st. I can tell you that it was well and very heavily attended. Our numbers indicate that we had 748 attendees present at the ribbon cutting, which is amazing. And of those, they actually stayed on average of 79 minutes, which is incredible. It means they didn't just come for the ribbon cutting and cut out, so to speak, really quickly. They decided to stay and explore and participate in the activities that we had. So that was pretty amazing. Just a kind of a little tidbit beyond that, because we use a system called Placer AI, which tracks cell phone data on the number of people that were present and the amount of time they stayed. They also immediately after primarily visited a lot of our restaurants downtown. So that was really cool. So they stayed in the area. So I thought that was a neat little tidbit of information. Now, with regard to the library, we are running through some last punch list items that we still need to complete. There is a door that now needs to be reinstalled after we removed it. It is required by fire code. Initially, we were told we didn't have to have it, and then when we did the fire inspection, they said, oh, no, just kidding, you do actually have to have that particular door. That is not in a public area. It's actually in the administrative offices upstairs that will close off the stairwell to the first floor. So that is being installed over the course of the next week. Unfortunately, the specific door is actually on back order, but the door should be framed out sometime within the next week or so. We are still working through the key card access. So right now, library staff are using actual keys. We'll be transitioning to key card access once we have those components. Some of them, unfortunately, were on back order, and so we're waiting on that. And then there are some other just kind of minor punch list items that we'll be doing. We'll be conducting a walkthrough with Ed, who is our project manager, and the contractor in the middle of next week to kind of identify what those are and to make sure those getting repaired. Although over the last couple of weeks, a lot of those items have already been done, but we're just going to review those and ensure that those are all fully completed. The last item that I have just really quickly is, unfortunately, I'm going to be out from the meeting over the next 2 meetings that we have, so for September and October. Just some not great timing on my part as far as some vacations are concerned, so we'll make sure that we get to see you again in November. While I'm stepped out, Leticia will be stepping in to oversee everything for you, though. So, and that concludes the item at this point, unless anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Robert. Any questions? No? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Robert. Moving along to our Library Trust Fund project accounts, presented by Leticia.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leticia Leal. I'm the Management Analyst for the Community Services Department, and I'll be providing you with a presentation today about the Library Trust Fund project accounts. So today I'll go over the Trust Fund project accounts, the Trust Fund project accounts that are restricted, the Trust Fund, or the Trust Financial Management, and also have a recommended action as well. So as part of the ongoing financial stewardship, the city and the library staff conducted a comprehensive review of the Library Trust Fund project accounts to evaluate the account balances, the project status, and remaining funding needs. Based on this review, the staff identified planned uses for available funds in the following accounts. So as you can see, we have a library technology project account. In that account, we have $5,848.02. The purpose of that account, the funding is designated for library technology improvements and enhancements. Our planned use for those funds will be used to upgrade the controlled access card reader system for the study pods and a TV display monitor in the lobby. For the literacy projects account, we have a balance of $4,463.87. The purpose for that funding, for that account, was designated for library literacy services, programs, outreach, promotions, and other literacy-related expenses. Our planned use for those funds will be used to upgrade the controlled access card reader system that's utilized by the literacy program. And for the Pioneer Room account, we have $17,388.30. These funds were designated for special projects and improvements benefiting the Pioneer Room. So those funds will be used to replace and modernize the Laserfiche microfilm machine located in the Pioneer Room. For the Youth Services Library project account, we had $4,973.66. This funding was designated for special projects supporting youth library services. The account funds have been utilized for the refurbishment of the children's library mural, and all the funds have been expended, and this project has been completed. And for the library circulating materials, we have a balance of $40,000. This funding is designated for the purchase of circulating library materials in a variety of formats to support the needs of the Escondido community. And the planned use, the funds will be used for the acquisition of library materials consistent with the account's purpose. Within these project accounts, we do have 3 that contain funds that are restricted for specific purposes. In coordination with the library staff, the remaining balances will be strategically expended on eligible projects, services, and materials that support the original intent and designation of the funds. So for the NEHOF donation, we have $36,493, and its purpose is these funds are restricted use to be used only towards the purchasing of adult and teen materials in a variety of formats. For the Ryan Trust Pioneer Room, we have $31,920.80, and these funds are restricted and only to be used for the operations of the Pioneer Room. And for the library infrastructure project, we have a balance of $60,170.25, and these have been designated for the purchase of the furniture for the library infrastructure project, of which we are still, the furniture is still pending delivery. This review supports the financial management of the Library Trust Fund by confirming the Trust Fund project account funds are used as they are intended, and they are returned when they're no longer needed. So this is helping us to streamline the management and the account administration of the Library Trust Fund. So our recommended action is to approve the closure of the library technology, literacy projects, Pioneer Room, Youth Services Library, and library circulating materials project accounts once all the remaining funds have been expended or when it is determined that the accounts are no longer necessary. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yes. What would you say are like the deadlines on those particular trust funds spending all of their money?
So for the project accounts that are not restricted, our plan is to spend them within this fiscal year, working alongside with Reno for some of them, and then obviously the next leadership that comes in as well. And for the restricted accounts, they don't have a spending date, but I'll defer to Robert for that.
As of right now, they don't have a spending date. However, we would be working with the library leadership team to ensure the responsible spending of those accounts to get them to a point where we can actually close those accounts if necessary. So no specific timeline at this point.
A question, is there a specific strategy we're looking for here, we're aiming towards to spend all this money? Because it's been in our coffers for quite some time, and in the past, we've kind of like, you know, I think the staff has approached us and said, hey, we'd really like to use these funds, but it sounds to me like for the non-restricted ones, we're using the funds for those CAC readers, and then we're looking to expend the funds for the restricted accounts. Is there something that's driving this desire to spend?
So what we're hoping to do is to spend through those funds that were the unrestricted funds and actually get to a place where we're actually using the funding and the money as it was designed or intended. And then putting those monies back into the trust itself to allow you as the board to be able to use those monies in other areas as they continue to come up. Because holding those monies in the accounts that they're in, they've been holding there for anywhere from 10, 15, 20 years, and we want to be able to look at how those funds are actually being used, because if they're not being used and they're not being spent, that means they're not actually needed for those particular items. We're placing them back into the trust. That gives you a lot more flexibility in how you can spend it in the future.
Based on that example, like a microfilm machine for the Pioneer Room, like what's the estimated cost for that? And then would the extra money then go back into the library fund?
I don't have the exact numbers for the new microfilm, but I do believe they are in the 6,000 range. We also have, of course, lots of project ideas specific to the Pioneer Room, and I have directed Aspen and our archivist Ashley to present and provide a package of what they believe are the best uses for the funds as far as, say, furniture and other equipment for the Pioneer Room. And so this goes into both that Pioneer unrestricted budget and the Ryan donation, which is more in this $36,000 range.
Got it. Thank you.
And any unutilized funds would go back into the trust fund.
And is there a timing then too on the, for the CAC readers? For the controlled access card readers? Did we have a timeline?
For the controlled access card readers.
So it's great that the planned use is here. I just was also curious on the timeline.
I think that would be better answered by Ed, our project manager, who unfortunately is not here today.
We can certainly get you that information, though.
When
what
I
that
went to
timeline
visit
looks
the
like.
library on Saturday, the rooms weren't accessible. Is that still an issue, or is this connected?
It is not directly connected
Okay.
to that. We have been working through our own controlled access issues, which we have resolved so far this week. Right now, we're just preparing for staff to be ready to let people into the rooms and have the full training and process of letting people into the pods and the 2 meeting rooms. There was one item that Robert mentioned, which was for the 2 meeting rooms, as we call them, which are the ones that are built in. Those ones did not have smart or controlled access devices, so we're working right now to get quotes to get those installed, and that's what Robert referenced in the use of those funds.
Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? And so the ask here is looking for a motion to approve that recommendation.
Yes.
So trustees on page 9, if anyone.
I motion to approve the closure of the 5 project accounts
Yes.
upon expenditure of all the remaining funds, or upon determination that the accounts are no longer needed.
Was there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And it is approved 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we've got policy library programs presented by Reno.
All right. Good afternoon, library trustees. As you know, I'm Reno Land, the library director. Today, we have a number of policies that we're asking for the board to review for approval. We are starting with the program policy for what we have as events, workshops, classes at the library. In short, the idea of having a program policy is to let the public and our staff know what we use as our requirements and expectations for library events that are free and open to the public. It works very similar and mirrors our collection development policy, echoing many of the same ideas and concepts from that, including access to information, the fact that we prioritize educational, free, and nonprofit partnerships in presenting programs. So really that is the whole conceit of this policy. It's to give everybody transparency and understanding of what is a library program, why we do library programs, and how we define them for both internal users and for external partners and the public. As with prior policies you have reviewed, this new policy does limit procedure and focuses on higher level policy and big idea kind of approach to what a policy is. And it's really as a tool to help you define what kind of programs we offer at the library. So I'm open to any questions, any concerns you have about the policy itself.
As with previous policies that have come before the board, this was also reviewed by the city attorney, I'm guessing.
Correct. All the
Right.
policies being presented tonight, including this library programs policy, have been vetted and edited by the city's attorney.
Any questions of the board or a motion to approve the policy?
I motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And it's approved 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead with the next one, policy, public technology and internet use.
All right. So we have, this policy is our public technology and internet use, sometimes just called the internet or computer policy. This does replace 2 prior policies that were working hand in hand and had been taken over historically. We had a computer use policy and we also had a wireless access policy. That's a result of computers coming before Wi-Fi, and so we had computer policy before we had a wireless policy. With this new public technology and internet use policy, it does combine that. It also modernizes the language to include more information related to personally identifiable information, how children and minors access the system. This was also a requirement for us to remain SIPA compliant, which is needed for what is called E-rate funding, which covers our internet connection, about an 80% discount. So we have high-speed internet at the library. And we are now working with the city to also get E-rate category 2, which also gives a major discount, but to hardware rather than just the internet connection. So that is why you see a lot of language related to children-specific filtering and SIPA-related language that was required by that. Beyond that, we modernize and include more than just computers. We also include access through the wireless network, the use of technology by the library for library use. As you can imagine, we have a number of new tablets and toys and gadgets that are used by the public and also by staff to present programs. So we wanted to include that under the umbrella of our technology and use policy. Are there any questions or any areas specific to the policy that you have more questions about or would like more information of?
I'm going off of memory here from, I think, the last meeting or maybe the one before that, but we had talked about if there was a breach, what would be the responsibility of the director or the staff to report that to the city within a very timely manner? Is that included in any of the information? Just like if the public's data was in any way compromised, where would that duty of responsibility lie?
Typically, we do include that as far as how the public uses and inputs their information. Say if they're putting information into an application or if they forget and leave something open. We do clearly state that we don't guarantee privacy or confidentiality because it is a public space. So there's partial coverage there. That relates more to how the public uses our devices. When it comes to us maintaining their confidentiality, there's a separate policy, which was the patron confidentiality and records policy, which I believe we discussed last meeting for approval. In this policy specifically, we do not have anything that directly manages or addresses what happens if there is a data breach. I would believe that would fall more under the city's internet or IS policies and safety policies, and that's more city-led as they are the owners and managers of our IT infrastructure. But if the board does want something, we can certainly work with city leadership and the city's information systems team to better understand what their response would be and what we could do in response as well to stay in compliance with city policy and procedure.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it were to happen, what would be the response plan for that type of event? It's more just like emergency planning and
Yes.
not something that I expect to happen. Or
We in LS&S do tend to have policies like that. And first of all, whenever there's that kind of emergency, we alert LS&S HQ. So I would tell Heidi, who is my supervisor, and we of course would alert our client. So liaison would be Robert, and if it was a major leak, we'd make sure that city managers are on board and aware. And of course, we would alert you all as soon as we learn what happened and what our response would be. We don't like to hide anything, and so as soon as we know and we alert all those involved, we would then probably have a public statement to alert people what kinds of data and to what extent the breach happened. I will just add that in most cases, the data we have at the library is also already publicly available data, like addresses and phone numbers. Most people don't love knowing that their data is out there in another way via breach, but we do not collect credit card numbers on file with our system. We only keep the bare minimum of what is required to operate. So name, address, contact.
yeah, I'm just thinking of a scenario with the checked out books, for example, and where that could go if that list was publicly available.
We do not, so for example, by patron account, by default, we do not keep track of reading history. Patrons can turn that on by themselves if they so choose.
Okay.
But I believe for the majority, I don't have the numbers, but most of our patrons do not have that turned on, mostly because it's a little tricky to do that.
Okay, so that's more of an opt-in thing. All right, I'll leave it at that.
Oh, yes. Heidi also reminded me that we do follow FCC regulations when it comes to messaging. We have our notification system called MessageBee, and so that's where people also have to opt in and recognize that they accept the terms of submitting information like their phone number for that kind of process.
Okay, cool.
One follow-up question I had was in relation to violations and enforcement. So what does that typically look like if a user is in violation of the user responsibilities? Is it just if staff catches it, or do the computers have monitoring software?
The computers do not have active monitoring. They do have a filter system, and that's to be SIPA compliant. In accordance with SIPA compliance, we can also disable the filter upon request. That is very rare, and most people do not ask for it, but that is an option. As far as, say, violations of the code of conduct, it's really dependent on staff. If somebody sees it, then we give them a warning, and this typically has to relate to inappropriate material beyond watch, say pornography or something similar. The filter does a lot of work there, so it's fairly difficult, but it does happen, especially more so on individual devices. We do not actively monitor, but if we see it, that means other people see it, and that's typically where we have, depending on the severity of the instance, either a warning or a day. We ask them to leave for the day and remind them of the policies and usually give them a copy of the specific policy, in this case, the computer and technology use policy.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion to approve this policy?
I motion to approve the public technology and internet use policy.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And it's approved 4-0.
Okay, thank you. On to the next policy, makerspace and creative equipment.
All right. So this does actually replace an older policy. So our makerspace and creative equipment policy covers work and use of equipment in what we would define as a makerspace, or what we are also calling our activity space. We did have an older policy that was called our 3D printer policy, which was the closest we had to this type of policy. Essentially, this mostly works on clearing up what equipment will offer and be available in our activity space and in programs. Such examples include the use of sewing machines, 3D printers, silhouette paper cutters, potentially in the future laser cutters, things of that nature where there's elements of both technology and safety concern, and allowing us to write in this policy the option to create waivers and other similar requirements for people to be certified in using the equipment, or defining how that equipment will be used in those spaces by both the patrons and the staff when teaching. Let me see if there's anything else I want to mention.
Just for reference, is the 3D printer running currently, or is there a 3D printer currently?
We do not currently have a modern 3D printer. We do have one in the works that President Reyes has offered to donate via a friend to the library. We have not had the chance to arrange a drop-off due to the fact that President Reyes has just given birth, and I think it's getting a little trickier to coordinate that. But we do at least have one in the works as far as donations, and then we will evaluate whether that one works for the public, or if we recommend purchasing one either through a grant, the Friends, or perhaps through a request from this board for a project budget for that purpose. Beyond that, really, this policy establishes guidelines for eligibility and access, so letting us set age requirements for using certain equipment, supervision requirements, training requirements. Again, these are all optional at this point. We have not finalized or set any policy or procedure specific to this. This is just giving us the framework to then go ahead and start writing those procedures and setting up waivers and papers for that purpose. And so, for example, materials, products, and supplies, we may restrict certain types of materials depending on the equipment. We might charge for materials if that is something that the library chooses to do. And of course, delineating what are not approved or prohibited uses of the equipment and the resources in the space, just to emphasize the fact we don't want people making weapons using the 3D printers, and they have to follow the code of conduct, nothing obscene, and of course follow all our other policies and procedures.
I'd assume too, if a 3D printer was accepted as a gift, it would be like wiped or reset to factory standards.
Correct.
Correct.
Are there any questions on any of the sections for this makerspace policy?
Motion to approve policy makerspace and creative equipment.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And it was approved 4-0.
Okay, on to policy room reservations.
Thank you again for the patience and the number of policies this evening. The room reservation policy is what it sounds like. Prior to the renovation, the library did not have any freely available rooms. We did have one room that was available for rental, which was a Turrentine room. That continues to be available for rental. But given the fact that we had no rooms that were open at no cost for the public, this policy was written with that in mind. The policy governs the types of rooms that are available, the type of work that can be done in the spaces, and we're very expansive in that. The main goal is to make it as easy for the public to access while still remaining true to the mission of the library, which is to be free, nonprofit, and as nonpartisan as possible, which is why there are some clauses in here that include prohibition for commercial services. This does not restrict, say, tutoring or, interviews by the patrons for work or telehealth. It's really meant to be a deterrent from people just running a business out of the library wholesale and having, from morning to dusk, work and sales all happening. While it might work in some libraries, the spaces we have and the expectation of sharing with the community does not necessarily align with that mission. We would recommend, for people that are looking for that, other nearby co-working spaces that are more for pay and designed for that purpose, which is why in this section we do include eligibility. That includes having a library card, is how we read it. We can also allow minors to reserve some of the spaces. It goes into descriptions about food and drinks, again mirroring our code of conduct, but it was to reinforce that idea that drinks are allowed in the spaces, food is not. There are areas in this policy that remind the public that they are responsible for the condition of the room, maintaining it clean, and that we expect that it will be returned in the same state that they found it in. And of course, alerting staff if something is broken, damaged, or otherwise not up to service standards when they got in. We, of course, also include a lengthy section about setting reservation, time limits and availability, restrictions. Let's see if there's anything else I want to mention here. Of course, we also mentioned that it is a shared environment. Some noise is expected, but just like with the code of conduct, it has to be within a reasonable amount. You can't just play whatever music you want in the study pods, because the volume does transfer. The pods, as I tell everybody on the tours, they are sound resistant, not sound proof. Please act accordingly. Are there any sections of this policy that we would like more information on, or if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Any questions? Do we have a motion?
I motion to approve the room reservations policy.
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
And it's approved 4-0.
Okay, and then the policy on community information materials.
This policy is replacing the distribution of free materials policy, which was first approved in 1993 and then renewed in 2012. This governs how we allow and offer the public to present information. This particularly typically goes towards when outside organizations or individuals present library staff with flyers or posters for events, especially in the community. The policy outlines expectations and requirements, as well as the ability for staff to designate a space for those materials. For your reference, we currently have that designated space as the wall right outside of the two new meeting rooms. So when you come in, there's a large wall, and that is where we'll be posting, for example, agendas for these meetings, city agendas, as well as any other community-related notices. We do include what kind of materials are what we accept for posting. In this case, we prioritize materials from local agencies like the City of Escondido, the county, schools, nonprofit agencies, announcements that are for events that are free or low cost. So not necessarily classes for sale, but if it's an event sponsored by, say, a charter school, that's a fair, that might be something eligible. We leave a lot of leeway for interpretation from staff and designated supervisors in the library based on this policy. As you know, some information might be a little bit of a gray area as to whether it's free, whether it's commercial or not commercial, and that usually happens pretty frequently. And so we do include this list to make it clear what our priorities are and expectations. We have a lot of space, so I don't expect there to be much demand as far as filling up that wall with flyers. I will quickly highlight the prohibited materials section. Like I said, we do try to stay true to the mission and vision of the library as a free, nonpartisan, and educational and informative center and hub for the community. So we do recommend not allowing commercial advertising, sales or promotions, support for specific political candidates or parties, ballot measures or campaigns. Materials are primarily for promotion of religious worship services or similar. Now, in that case, say, for example, a church sponsors a community event, a fair, a drive, that would fall under this policy as approved as it is a free community event. So we have some leeway there depending on what the goal of the event is. And we go into great depth about why political or religious information is or not allowed based on the policy. And I think that's about it. As a reminder, even if we do post it, we do include in the policy a non-endorsement clause. It does not mean that the library, the city, the board, we do not necessarily endorse it just because we include it as part of the community's information mission of the library. Are there any questions or concerns for this policy?
Yeah, this isn't a concern, it's just more logistics. We've been talking about the bulletin board, but these would apply to the entire library, including the grounds, like outside, like the lawn?
There are separate, depending on what you mean, like for example, when it comes to when the library is during polling season, there's restrictions based on laws to how far people can be from a polling place. We are not a polling place, we are a drop-off location for voting. I'd have to double check to see if there's any restrictions there. As far as posting outside, say putting things on the outside building, that would apply in that we would not consider that to be an acceptable place to post materials. You'd have to submit it to the library and post it. It's just like what the city's policy would be for posting on and near recreation centers.
I was just thinking like a lawn sign on the corner of like Calmea that just kind of makes its way there. That would be not allowed.
That I would have to double check with Robert and the parks team because I have not had to enforce that in recent memory, but.
We do not permit signage on city property in general. It is usually removed when it comes up. We do have policies governing sponsorships, banners, signs in our parks and facilities.
That's what I assumed, but I just wondered if this applied to the entire library space, not just the billboards. But
And it sounds like,
makes sense.
as this policy does include that we have to adhere with existing city policy, that would be the response.
Got it. Thank you both.
Any other questions, or if not, a motion?
I motion to approve the new library policy to guide review, placement, display, distribution, and removal of community information materials submitted by outside individuals, organizations, agencies, or groups.
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
And it's approved 4-0.
Thank you. On to item number 9, Library Director Departure and Transition Plan.
So that's not me anymore.
Thanks so much.
Okay. As you all know now, unfortunately, Reno is leaving us for the next chapter in his career. And as a result, we need a transition plan. So I'm like to introduce Heidi Delamore. She's the Vice President of Operations for LS&S. And I have been working with Heidi over the course of the last week since I found this information out so that we can develop a plan and have that ready to go for you here this evening. So Heidi and I have been working closely together, like I said, to develop a plan. So a couple things I do want to share with you. It is your obligation to oversee the library operations and ensure it is meeting the needs of the community and the city. That includes the approval of the library director. Now, my initial email that was sent to you indicated that that was LS&S's sole obligation. However, the bylaws for the library board were amended just a few years ago, prior to me stepping into this role, that actually indicated that you have authority over being involved in the approval of the appointment of the library director, and only the library director as it involves the library staff. So I need to be a little bit clear about that. So one of the things that we want to make sure is that we, as the city, you as the Board of Trustees, and LS&S are all on the same page. So there's a process that we've essentially have outlined here for you. What we're looking at is an anticipated timeline of approximately 15 weeks. So it will take a while to get the right candidate into this position. And that will include the identification of the immediate interim leadership of the library. That will be Dan Wood, who is the current assistant library director. He will be stepping into the interim role. It's not the first time that he's done that. He actually did that just prior to Reno getting the library director position as well. So we're very happy to have him, his many years of experience, and have already having stepped into this role as an interim before, he knows exactly what to expect. I've had the pleasure of working with Dan since before the library was transitioned to LS&S, so we have a great working relationship, and I do not anticipate any challenges as we move forward through this process. The next step then would be kind of planning the position profile. And where that would be is, what do you like to see and the qualities that you want to see as a part of the next library director? When I'm finished with this, I've got a series of questions for you that are going to elicit some responses that will kind of draw out what you as the Board of Trustees are looking for in the next library director. Following that, LS&S will go through the recruitment and outreach process. And then after that, they will go through screenings and some initial assessments for all those candidates. Then they individually will conduct panel interviews. So they'll start off the process with panel interviews. Then after that, they will do kind of some semifinalist interviews as well as some assessments within that process. And then from there, it gets passed over to us, which is really amazing. So I love the fact that LS&S has been very amiable in that, allowing us the opportunity to kind of step into this position to where we will have an opportunity to interview what they are expecting to be their final candidates, whether it is 2, 3, I don't know how many they're going to pass along. It's just going to depend, but that is an opportunity for the board of directors, a representative from the city, as well as some community stakeholders. And so we'd like to make sure that the community is also involved in this process, and that's very important to us. And then following kind of that process will then be the transition and onboarding process for the new library director. So again, there's a couple of different points in here in which the Board of Trustees is going to have a lot of really great input and participation. So just to review really quickly, the candidate profile, which we're going to go over this evening, board representation on the interview panel, and then I've also requested basically a meet and greet with the full board as well, with the final candidate. So whoever that final candidate will actually be. And then ultimately during that point, that will also then be the actual approval process where you will vote on approving that candidate to serve in that new role. So in addition to your approval, the city manager also must give approval. However, my guess would be if you approve the library director, barring any major issues, the city manager will be happy with whom we select. So LS&S has also outlined a series of evaluation framework, and that's in that grouping right there in the page that I've handed you. And then just as a last little piece, I just want to share with you, it is important to maintain confidentiality throughout this entire process. Many of the individuals at this level of a position may not have shared the information with their current employer, and it is really important that we maintain that level of confidentiality when we're coming across names, having conversations, asking questions, developing what those questions are. So it's also not to give any one individual candidate a leg up in this particular process. So I just kind of wanted to share that with you. So that is kind of where we are. Before we jump into kind of the questions and the facilitation of this discussion about what you'd like to see, do you have any questions for myself or Heidi as we kind of go through this process?
So recognizing the confidentiality piece, just for my clarification, for the finalist discussion portion, is that like our board but in closed session? Is that something separately?
It would not be closed session, but they would be essentially the final candidate.
Okay.
So they would be the ones that ultimately you'd be selecting, and it would be a meet and greet. At that same time, that meet and greet would also develop into an actual vote.
Understood, okay. And then timing-wise, we're looking at that likely being what, the November or December?
I would say November, December
Okay.
timeframe. Heidi, would you agree with that?
So it's variable, and so these are all estimates. You know, I would say an accelerated timeline. This could all happen in 12 weeks. We are kind of bumping up against the start of the winter holidays towards the end of that. If we do start to get into that realm, that can add some extra time. So best case scenario, we might be able to make an October meeting, but otherwise we're probably looking at November.
Okay, thank you. I want just to call it out for the board's awareness, just for attendance purposes and putting it on the radar.
Sorry, no, go for it.
Sorry, my bad. The planning and position profile, does that include the job description?
So the job description, no. The quick answer is no. What this defines is really our two things. So one, our recruitment materials. So the way that we are advertising the position. So the job description really goes into the specific duties and responsibilities. But this is an opportunity to really speak more to fit and vision and priorities within those responsibilities. So I will factor that in when developing the recruiting materials. I will also build that into the interviews and the assessments that we create to evaluate the candidates.
Does the information go out to like all of LS&S directors if they're interested, or assistant directors? And then-
Absolutely. I mean, that's how we got Reno.
Yeah. So it stays within your organization, and then does it go out publicly as well?
Correct. So there are some traditional trade publications and places where library jobs are posted that reach their intended audience. So we will use all of those as well as all of our other recruiting tools.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for outlining all of this for us. I think the last time we went through this, it was kind of tumultuous and we had a lot of ironing out to do. So I do really appreciate the transition plan being put into place.
Yeah, I obviously, when Reno was hired, it was before I stepped into the role of liaison, and I'd heard how challenging that selection process was, and I hearing from the executive team within the city, it was important for this process to work smoothly and to ensure that you, as the Board of Trustees, had full view into what this process looked like and the ability to be able to participate in this process. And LS&S, I will say, has been an amazing partner with us and with me for this process, so I do appreciate that.
I just want to second that. I just remember the previous board member, John's reaction to not having a plan last time. So this is awesome. Thank you.
Heidi, I do have a question. Since our contract is only extended 2 more years, do you think that might be a factor that candidates might be worried about when they're applying for this position?
I can't speak with utter certainty, but I do not believe so. I think that, just to be perfectly honest, the next director is walking into a pretty plum situation. I think you are, this is a desirable place to live, and you have a beautifully newly renovated library, and you have a strong collections budget. You have an excellent staff. You have a lovely working relationship with the city, the board. These are special qualities. And so I think that, regardless of what happens, the library is not going away. And so I don't think that kind of continuity issue would, I hope it won't be a factor. And certainly, I'm happy to have very direct conversations with candidates about any questions or concerns that they have related to that, to alleviate those concerns.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So I think as far as the candidate profile, there are a number of different avenues that we can actually go down. However, I'd like to focus a little bit less on the specific qualities and even the experience, and focus a little bit more on what success for this community and this library actually mean. So that's where I would like to focus our efforts a little bit more. So in speaking to that then, so we're looking at community and we're looking at what vision that might have. So one of the questions I would like to pose to you is, what is the most important way that the library serves the community today? And what that will do is that will draw out what we're looking for potentially in a candidate. And then as a follow-up to that, what are the community needs currently unmet, if we have any, right? And what could we do to better address that in the future? So what these two questions essentially are speaking to is the vision that we are looking for the next library director to have in regard to the position, the library, and the community.
I can try to go first here. Of the qualities listed out here, I feel like community engagement and strategic thinking stand out to me the most, because we do have to create a new strategic plan, I believe, in 2027. So for whoever the new director is, they'll be having to think about what the community needs are very quickly out of the gate. And then community engagement, I still believe over the last 3 years is one of the most critical pieces. People knowing about the library, knowing about the events, and everything connected to it and what it has to offer, I think is critical for whoever's next.
I think for me, one of the things that we do very well and have to keep in mind, because our city is so unique, I think, especially given what it's surrounded by. I think someone with a background in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and understanding what that means and how it applies to our library is going to be really important, because that's what our community is, right? We're a very diverse community, and we need to continue to serve the diverse public that we have. And then I think, getting to Francis's points on engagement, we all know that our library is a very big center of our community, but I think that that's very quiet outside of those who use the library. I think everyone that I speak to, at work and around about the library is like, oh yeah, I go there, I use it, but it's not a loud usage. And so I think somebody with a vision of how to be loud about our library would be very good. Maybe somebody with a background of, bringing more attendance in, and reaching out to the community too. And then as well, aligning our vision with the vision of the city and making sure that we're able to secure the resources that are becoming more available in the city. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my answer was going to be similar to what Caroline already talked about. And it's the culture aspect that we've had here with Reno coming on board. We didn't have the amount of culture recognition as we do today prior to Reno. And I remember how painful it was that we weren't, for me personally, we weren't recognizing like Black History Month. And then as soon as Reno came on board, we're doing way more than I ever expected. So it's like representing the different cultures and then teaching each other and the community about the different cultures is something that is very important that I feel like we need to continue to do. So somebody who has that kind of desire and passion can continue that forward. And also the inclusion, as Carolyn mentioned, about the different between the kids and the seniors, and just making sure that we're covering everyone in the community. And then an unmet topic point, I wouldn't say it's unmet, just something that we should focus on as we move forward in this crazy futuristic world is, having somebody who has the foresight to develop programs between like AI and technology and social media, and just educating the community on that.
And I agree with my fellow trustees that I'd probably highlight community engagement as one of the key parts, because I do feel like it encompasses just knowing this community that we are, how diverse it is, how to serve that diverse population. To me, it's kind of this idea of listening. I mean, someone who's going to be a good listener and getting out in the community and building those relationships. So then that coupled with, I think, communication skills is going to be critical. So someone who can listen and someone who can clearly communicate and articulate kind of the loud, like Carolyn was talking about, but also for our purposes of the board, this is the person who's going to be coming and giving us monthly reports and, speaking directly with us to communicate the work of the library. So I think just an effective communicator, they're out there, they're listening to the community, and then they're articulating and kind of giving us that information back, because I do feel like Reno's done a great job with that.
Yeah. And then just one go back. I think Reno has been fantastic. I'm sad to lose you, but I hope that it's I'm sure it's a great opportunity. But one of the things that I've loved about Reno is he really embraces the board's questions. So in previous instances, we've asked questions, we've asked for metrics, and I think Reno's professionalism there is something that we hadn't seen previously. And the metrics tell the story, and that's how we are able to prove to our community that we are meeting their needs. So somebody who has that background would be
Yeah, and also, we're just saying everything that Reno does well. Like, can you just clone Reno? And Heidi, I have to say, like, the bar is set high. Like, you yeah, agree. Like, Reno was like the final candidate that we got to interview when he started, and there was no other, and I'm glad there wasn't, because Reno was it. And so the bar is high, so good luck. We have high expectations. But the other thing that, Reno does well is just having the collaboration, like Carolyn is saying, with us, and including us, and being intentional and intuitive about what to clue us in, because we don't know what we don't know, but Reno is always like, you're going to need to know this. This is a problem. We're going to discuss this. So being very forthcoming as part of, like, including the board in the decision making.
So I think one of the things that I'm hearing, and I'm going to now ask a different question as related to leadership style, right? So you've talked a lot about Reno and his ability to lead. So let's dive into that maybe a little bit more, as far as, like, you've mentioned communication, ability to be able to listen. What are some leadership qualities that are most important for our next director?
I'd like to see somebody who takes ownership. I think that Reno does that extremely well. While he delegates and allows his staff to grow, he owns the outcomes.
I would add a really critical, I think, leadership quality is just resource allocation, just a really keen understanding of resource allocation, and leading with what maybe little you have, or sometimes you have a lot, regardless of lean or thick time, is just resource allocation skills as a leader, whether that's staffing and people or fiscal, I feel like is a really, really important thing.
Just off the top of my head, like I've heard before about leadership, like if the place can run without you, that's a sign that you're doing something really, really well. So I would hope that the next director has that in mind, that they're giving empowerment to the people underneath them to get things done as well.
So how important would you say collaboration, communication, innovation, and kind of accountability for this role are? Are those very high, medium, kind of low, a mix? What are we looking at?
All the way.
Okay. You've also talked a lot about what I heard, relationship building. And obviously it's very important for this community to have a library director that sounds like they're very visible within the community. What role do you believe that the library director should have in building those relationships with the community, the different organizations, our stakeholders, the city, that kind of thing?
I don't necessarily think that the library director has to do it all, but they should have a plan, because I feel like there are certain members of the community that are out there. Is it Maria with the kids? And then there's someone else that goes to the festivals, and I think it's set up really well that the certain amount of staff have the responsibility to do it. So as long as they have a plan to reach out into the community, because I don't think that should all fall on one person.
Yeah, very much so. So then that then begs the next question is, how visible should the library director be? Because obviously I understand and I get that they cannot do it all, right? None of us can. And giving and empowering the staff to be able to do these things. But at what level should the library director be visible? What's the importance of that? And where's that line?
Well, I think visible as part of leadership, like board meetings, the other Library Foundation, just being visible. Like, I think Reno does. Do you do Rotary? Yeah, just visible in the community, but I don't think it's like a number one priority. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, the visibility aspect is, this person represents the library and is the liaison between, the library and the city. But as far as like visibility in the community goes, they don't have to live here, like, but then too, I don't know, there's something to be said for quiet leadership as well. Advocating for the library that you represent. You don't need to be, I don't think you need to really be well-known. The library needs to be well-known.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I like the way that Virginia said it. I mean, I think it is incumbent on the director to empower the staff and have representation out and about and highly visible in the community, but it doesn't have to just be them. And I think our board's, the minimum expectation, obviously, is at these meetings monthly. So, yeah, they don't need to necessarily be like the town celebrity of a level of visibility, but yeah, that they just really utilize their staff appropriately.
I think we saw it in the run-up to the grand reopening with news media, for example, the director being out front. I even saw you, Robert, on the news as well. I think that level is absolutely critical for this role, to be able to represent the library at that level of visibility and speak to whatever it is that is being inquired about. That skill set will be needed.
Okay, so let's transition now to kind of more operations and management questions. So what operational strengths should the next library director have?
Delegation. I also like these policies and understanding the difference between a process or procedure and a policy. That know-how of how things operate, and then how do we maintain flexibility while not confusing the public.
And how does strategic planning play a role in that level of library management and operations then look like for you? Because obviously that's an important part of this. You've already mentioned that.
Yeah, so were you part of the strategic plan last time? No. No? Okay. So last time we did the strategic plan, LS&S came through with an amazing amount of resources. To me, in strategic planning, the role of the director is to be the subject matter expert of what the library needs and what the community wants. So to me, like, that person can understand strategic planning, but they will have an army behind them of people who have all of that knowledge already. So if that's a place where they can grow into, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think I don't see it mentioned here. I might be missing it, but just someone that's analytical, but also accountable. We do know that while the resources have increased, there are probably lots of places where you have to say no, and saying no is one thing, but also saying no, but we can try this or that. At least being creative with your decision making, I think, goes a long way in this type of role.
I'll just add that it is critical, because without like a vision and goals and then this next iteration of what a strategic plan will look like with this new iteration of leadership, it's like, well, where are we going? How is the board able to hold someone accountable, or what are we tracking in terms of metrics, et cetera? So I do think it is critical so we can track growth.
Okay, so drilling down a little bit farther, we're talking about the library director will be responsible for the staff, correct? And building a culture at the library that Reno has done over the years has really developed his team. what kind of things do you believe that the staff should expect from their next library director? And I realize that may be a better question for the staff, but I'm very curious from a board perspective, what are your expectations that you think the staff would like to see within their library director?
I would just say a deep appreciation and understanding for the work that each of them does. Individuals come up through to become a library director from different paths, and they may not have been housed in every single area, but at least if the person coming in has a deep understanding and appreciation for literacy services, for, the youth librarian, like things like that. I think just, I know it's a lot easier for a lot of staff in whatever role to have a good and respectful relationship with your manager when you know that maybe they don't know every single thing about what you do and how you do your job, but there's an appreciation and understanding and a willingness to get to know, because then I think that will also help the existing staff feel seen.
I also think it's important that this person is on the high end of a servant leader, since they're supporting the community and the staff who's supporting the community, and it should definitely be like an open collaboration. This person should be approachable and somebody who's just like not a dictator kind of leader, more of a collaborative, I'm here to serve my employees and the community.
And I think I would just add to that, like collaborative, but also decisive. So making sure that decisions are made and you go down a path, and if you have to pivot from that path, fine, but not like wishy-washy as to where we're going to go. Yeah.
Okay, so I only have a few more questions, I promise. This is important, and this is why I have so many questions. I want to be clear as to what your direction is, so Heidi can actually work that into a profile and know exactly who we're looking for, right? I understand, and I know that over the next couple of years, especially, over the last year specifically, we've had some very major changes that have occurred to the library in both, really the physical structure of the building and the initiatives and programs that we've run. Over the next couple of years, what major changes or initiatives might you see or like to see at the library that the library director may be actively involved in promoting?
I'll jump in real quick, but literacy services, I don't really have a great understanding of how that'll be funded in the future. So whoever the new director it is, I would hope would have a vigor to essentially keep that going as long as possible and make sure it's well funded. But that would be top of mind.
Can I speak to that just briefly? So I always like to tell the story of literacy services, in particular adult literacy services in California, because we do something really special. So in California, adult literacy services lives in our public libraries. It lives with our state library. We have state funding that flows through the state library to public libraries across California, specifically dedicated to adult literacy. And that's been in place for decades. It has weathered many a storm. There are cycles of lean years and flush years, but it didn't go away during COVID. It didn't go away during the Great Recession. I think it's nothing is certain, but it is about as certain as stable as it can get, even though it is a grant that we receive on an annual basis. It is, I would say, among all of the grants that are available to libraries in California, it is the most constant and the most stable and one of the most well run and supported. So I think that when you're thinking about the future of of literacy services, the programs that we offer are directly a benefit of that state-level investment. And so just something for you to be aware of, that every year when the state is putting together its budget, it is your state assembly members that are making that decision. And you have the opportunity to be an advocate and supporter of adult literacy programs by reaching out to them.
Well,
making
we
your
have
voice
Giselle.
I was going to say, you better believe I'll be advocating at the state board, library services board level, so
heard. Congratulations, by the way.
thank you. Yeah.
So back to kind of some initiatives, major changes that might be occurring or the library might be facing in the next couple of years. What would you like to see? What do you think the library will be facing? One of the comments that was previously made was about technology and the ever-changing face of that. And with AI being something new, that may be something that might play into this as well. Are there some other things that you can think of that would be important, that might be top of mind for you?
I mean, for me, it's max utilization of this amazing space. Like, we've got rooms now that we didn't have before in the previous library, so I think that's comprehensive of what new programming might be coming in to draw people into the tween space. Our library's beautiful. It's just, I want to see those rooms and those spaces filled. And I think our ability as a board to just be checking in on the accountability and the progress of that and how it's going is at least paramount for me. I mean, it's what good is a beautiful building if it's not being utilized? I just think I would love to see it packed, and there's a lot of opportunity there. So that's why I bring that up, that I think is important is, okay, beautiful new space, and now what?
Right.
What's next? Yeah.
Just from my perspective, the one thing that always catches me off guard is when people talk about the past and the relationships before the privatization and all that stuff occurred. There's still a group of people within Escondido that want to see things revert back to stuff that existed way before I was on this board. So just being aware as a new director of the history of the relationship between the community and where it's at and where it's going, and being able to articulate the benefits of LS&S. It's just the one thing that I always hear when I'm out and about in the community that always catches me off guard slightly.
I think too, just being, it's important to be mindful of what's going on in the city. Like, the community has a lot of discussion around homelessness, and not that the library can do much about it, but like, if there's ever support or awareness that needs to happen, just to be paying attention to like the big city initiatives.
Great. All right, last couple of questions, I promise. At least from me. Heidi might have some. This one goes a little bit more towards experience, right? What kind of experience is essential? The next library director, should they have been a library director? Or is it someone who has aspirations of becoming a library director and has all the qualifications, the skills that you're looking for, can step into that role? What experience is important? And does it have to come from libraries? Can you look from someone that might be outside the box? Maybe they didn't necessarily run a library specifically previously, or it was maybe related in some form or fashion. So what kind of experience is important to you?
I think just experience with managing people, budgets. One thing that I do appreciate about Reno is he's always looking for free money, so grants. That's really important because that's got us a lot more things that we didn't know that we could have. And I don't necessarily think that they need to be, I'm not title driven, so I don't care if they have not previously held a director role, but somebody who has led people and led a organization, whether it's community or outside. But I think I do appreciate that they do have library experience.
I think a couple of things. One, I think that they need to have the experience and background, which will be the basis of respect from the staff. So if somebody's coming in and doesn't have the same education level or things like that, I think they absolutely need to have the right education in order to perform this role. I think from an experience perspective too, I would really like this individual to be fluent in Spanish, to have that bilingual piece. And then I'm cool if they have done some interesting other things. Like Reno came from a really like niche library. So if they have like, if it's kind of interesting and they have a good, they can demonstrate like applicability of their methodology to our community and how that would help us, I think that would be really good.
I'll just chime in to say absolutely a +1 from me on the bilingual preference and a level of education, because I agree that I think that it will garner a certain level of respect among the staff. And again, I think that journey and that path, and this is someone who works in higher ed, I think it's just really important.
I think library experience and that domain knowledge is critical and should be a starting point. And having someone with no library experience, I think, would be the wrong choice at this time. Agree on the Spanish, and if it's possible. But yeah, those are my two things.
Okay, great. You've supplied both of us with a wide range of really important information. Heidi, do you have any questions that you would like to ask of the board?
I do, just a couple of questions, and I think you've already spoken to a lot of these things, but I just want to make sure that I'm honing in on the top priorities. So if you had to say what qualities differentiate either this library or Escondido as a community, and those can be qualities that differentiate you now in this moment, or they can be aspirational qualities as well. But I think the thing to keep in mind is that candidates are also interviewing us, and they're looking for the right fit for themselves. And so if you had to think about how you would sell this to someone versus other opportunities they might be considering, what is your differentiating factor?
I think it's that Escondido has an immense amount of potential. So we're surrounded by cities who are kind of sleepy, and I think that the people of Escondido are very driven by growth. And I think that the library space there, we're kind of just exploring. So there is like a lot of potential for the library to be, like a catalyst for Escondido's future.
I think a big thing too is the ability to promote and build culture. So the diversity that's here lends itself to such a flavorful and unique culture that is, I think, interesting to be part of and critical for the library's future to deeply embed itself in that as well, and in the trajectory of growth that's happening. So we view it as a hub and a center for culture and that development. I think that's something really special to pitch to a future candidate. There's a special culture.
Yeah, I would sell the renovation to the candidate, which you've already mentioned at the top. I see Escondido probably as like a launching pad for directors as well, to move on to maybe bigger markets. So if it fits within somebody's trajectory for their own career, like this is a great spot to build culture, as someone just mentioned.
And I think, I mean, I learned this from Reno, and I think one of the reasons why he was interested in this position is to have the board experience in working with the board. So if, that might be a unique sell for someone, if they're looking for that kind of experience. But honestly, and jokingly, we also have Safari Park and wineries, so. Yeah, you could put that in there. But I am just curious, because you do have to sell this to candidates. They are interviewing us. It has to be the right fit for them. But San Diego's expensive, and I don't know how much this position pays and if it's affordable. But do you think that is a factor in how expensive it is in this community?
So I do think that, we all feel the pinch of cost of living. I think that people feel that everywhere. I do think that that the trade-offs are pretty sweet for what we get in our California lifestyle. So it's a fit both ways. I think the people who are drawn to what Escondido has to offer understand that's what the cost of living is here. I do think that something else to keep in mind is that, especially when we're thinking about prior experience level of potential candidates, one of the things that I really pride myself on, or I think that LS&S really prides itself on, is the amount of support that we provide to directors, which means that we are very appealing as a first experience as a director, and so we often see candidates who are interested in making that next big step up, and we are very willing to consider them, which not everywhere is. Some places will only consider people who've already been a director. They want the safety that brings, or the perceived safety that brings. But I think that by having someone with that fresh vision, that lends a real vitality to our libraries that personally excites me and I think is fun to work with.
Is this a ceiling? Is this position also a ceiling for a candidate? Is it a director level and that's it? That's all you can move, and if you want a promotion, you have to move on?
So I think that's another thing that is unique about LS&S, because we are, we're kind of unique. We occupy a unique space within the field. In many ways, we operate as a consortium, and so there is if you are so inclined and interested, and have the mental space and capacity to give attention to those things, I think it's very easy to become involved more regionally or more at the state level. We have a broad network of statewide colleagues that you can very quickly tap into. We also have other divisions within our company. We have a software analytics platform. We have an outside consulting platform. We have a marketing analytics platform. We have, the list goes on. And so I think that many of our directors really enjoy the level of access and participation and voice and thought leadership that they get to engage in as part of our company. We invite our directors to participate in the roadmap visioning for software development. That's not something that most directors get. So I think within our company, there's an opportunity to create your own growth that may not exist for others. I think also it's a very personal decision. There are There are some people who might want to move from smaller library to bigger library. It might be some people who might who start in a bigger library and then work their way up within a bigger library. But working in a single branch library is very different than working in an 8-branch library, is very different than working in a 30-branch library. And different people are drawn to those different qualities. If you're in a 30-branch system, you are an administrator. If you're in a single branch, you have a different kind of opportunity to connect with direct public service. And because that direct public service is why so many of us got into librarianship, it's one of the things that we often miss as we move into administration. And so that, for many people, that's actually a selling point. The scale is part of the fit that they're looking for.
Well, you said that it hits with me and resonates is like the fresh vision, the thought leadership piece for whoever that new director is. I guess it doesn't really matter how their background is as long as it's within libraries, but their desire to understand the change that comes with libraries, and we're evolving rapidly every single day. I'm sure Reno gets tons of questions about the DVDs, but like whoever that new person is should be thinking beyond that. So we've already touched on this with the AI piece as well, but.
Yeah, and I think getting back to your point, Heidi, I don't, personally for me, they don't need to have had a director role before. I think as long as, like Francis said, they have the vision, they're excited, they come into the community, they observe, and they say, I think this, and this will make an impact, and then we can run with it. And then, just one more thing about selling to this individual, and I'm not going to toot my horn, but everybody else on this board is extremely engaged. We're big advocates of the library. We take that very seriously, that responsibility. So I think, if it's a new person, they get to learn a lot, and we, get to learn from them, and we get to grow something cool together.
One more question for you, and this is just kind of a temperature check. So some of this will depend on what the applicant pool looks like. There are anyone that we would put before you is someone that we would feel confident in their ability to do the job. That's why we have an extensive vetting process. By the time that they get to you, what we're trying to offer you is a choice. And so sometimes there are multiple candidates that pass that bar. Sometimes there's someone who is way ahead of the pack. And so I just wanted to get your sense of, is there a strong desire to have a choice? Or if a candidate emerges who is head and shoulders above the rest, are you comfortable then with a single finalist?
Just speaking as a hiring manager in the past, I did prefer to have a choice, but I also understand circumstances. So I'm flexible on it, but I like having to make tough decisions when it comes to finding the right fit for the right role.
Mm-hmm.
I have to, this is like triggering me from when we hired Reno. So I have to just share that we didn't, Reno was the only candidate that was presented to us, and we were not happy back then. We wanted the choice. Mm-hmm. But it worked out fine. So we were pleasantly surprised, but I agree with Francis that it would be nice to have a choice. And then that way, I don't think that we should be prepped that there's one candidate way far ahead than another candidate. I think that we should figure that out for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to disagree. I think, and it's fine, whatever. But for me, I think you guys have demonstrated how your prowess in all of this. I am not a librarian. I do not have a degree in library studies or anything like that. So I'm going to depend on your expertise And unless there's like a glaring issue, I'm good with just one candidate.
And my vote is it's very similar to what Francis said. I think the preference is a choice, but that may not always be the case. I am currently sitting on 2 hiring committees at my job and have been on 5 so far this year. And sometimes someone drops out at the. I mean, sometimes there were maybe 2 or 3 finalists heading in, and someone. It's a very interesting job market right now, so I can respect that as well and know that your hands may be tied in it. I would agree. I think that you all, having brought Reno to this board and to this city, know what you're doing, and we trust that you'll do that again. So my preference is having a choice, but tons of flexibility and trust in you all in the process. So,
Thanks, I appreciate that. And happy to answer any additional questions that you have about the process, to give you any insights or opportunity for you to provide feedback in terms of how you would like to see that process progress.
I mean, I just think at the next meeting, we get an update. I think that's suffice to me, at least.
We would be more than happy to provide you an update. Actually, Leticia would be more than happy to provide you an update at the next meeting. But we will make sure that you are well informed within this process as we continue to go down this path. That's important to the city, it's important to LS&S, it's important to you as the oversight board. So we will definitely make sure that you are involved in that process. And then when the time comes for interviews to be conducted, we will, as outlined in the agreement and your bylaws, it is the president and secretary. However, if our president is unavailable, our secretary will be the one that would be stepping in to that role. So,
okay, thank you. No further questions on item 9. We'll move forward. Okay. Item 10, statistics report presented by Reno.
All right. I'm back again for the last statistic reports I'll be presenting to this board in my role as library director. I am happy to present the last of the stats from our time at the North County Mall. As you see, presented before you, the stats stayed steady throughout May. Nothing too novel to point out during that month. I will say that for next month, when you see June, you will see a dip in that we did close the mall library and we opened our temporary services in the Pioneer Room. And of course, that reflects in a decrease in a number of our key stats, as was the case the year before when we did the same when we moved to the mall. We are looking forward with great anticipation to see what the stats look like now that we are back to our main library. And we'll have those in a few months once we've had the time to collect stats and some initial takeaways from you at that time. Are there any questions for the months of May or the stats that we're seeing for this month's report?
Just my one note is ensuring, is Dan set up for success and it's good on, okay. That was all. Continuity on our statistics report. Thanks. Okay, no further questions, so moving on to director's report.
Awesome. So I did include in this month's report just a final note from myself to you, the board, and to whoever wishes to read these reports in the future. We've done so much great work. Of course, you've already highlighted some of our great accomplishments in my time here. Everything we've done is not possible without all the amazing staff that have helped me from the very beginning, and that goes from both the city, from LS&S, and of course our great city staff and library staff here. Here tonight, of course, we have with us Dan Wood, our current assistant library director and interim library director while we look for a new candidate. And also with us tonight is Aspen Hill, who is our operations manager. I do want to thank them both. My success would not have been possible without their help and their support, as well as the support of Heidi and Robert and his team. But especially right now during the move back, you know, it was every morning meeting with Dan and Aspen to see where the staff was at, what kind of support they needed, what the next steps were, what information we were getting from the city, and that is what I expect will continue to happen even once I'm gone. So I'm leaving the library in a very capable hands, both locally and from LSNS's perspective. So rest assured that what we've built so far will continue, and I expect it to continue getting better as we get used to the new spaces, the new building, the services, and from the great questions I heard tonight about what you're looking for in the next candidate, I'm sure whoever is chosen will do a great job leading the library well into the future, or as long as they think they've done their job, which is what I did. I think it's very important to just highlight the fact that the library is always growing, always changing. We've changed a lot even in the relatively short time I've been here. We've seen now with your support an increase to the collections budget. We've seen a realignment in how we spend those monies to better fit the needs and demands of our community, our diverse community. That has had some hard choices, like what we had to do with Hoopla. And as we look towards the future, I wouldn't be surprised if there are similar choices that are brought before this board. But I would expect that just as we work together collaboratively, that the next generation of leadership would work with you and your replacements to ensure that the library meets those needs for the community. It's been an honor working with you and the staff. It's a once in a lifetime experience to renovate a library of this caliber and a community that supports to such an extent. I look forward, and hopefully we'll be lucky to have such a similar experience again in the future. But overall, I just want to say thank you. And that was my note for leaving. I am happy to stay in contact. I do follow all the social media of every library I've led or worked at, so I will be following Escondido to see where they go after I've left. Libraries are a small world. I can already tell you that in the few meetings I've had letting people know where I was going, they've told me, oh, I used to be in that area, or I worked there, that's great. So libraries, we all talk, we all work together, we try to support each other, so you will expect that.
Rena,
Beyond that,
can I
yes.
ask you, would you be comfortable sharing where you're going so that we could visit you if we're in that town?
Sure. If you are in the Glendora area in LA County, I will be their library director starting in September. So if you're up in Glendora, stop by and say hi, or just message me on LinkedIn. I'm on there, so let me know. But happy to see you there as well. But yeah, beyond that, I do want to highlight, even though it was a moving month, we were very busy in July. As you mentioned, we've had great press coverage of the lead up to our reopening from all levels of local press. We were in the Times Advocate, various TV stations, covered us either in print or in video. The social media team from the city and the library were on it. It was amazing to see how much the community moved and was excited to see us reopen. And as Robert mentioned, that was reflected in the crowd and the excitement that we saw on the ribbon cutting day. And I can tell you for sure that that first week was also reflective of how happy and excited people are to have their library back. The Children's Library has been nonstop chaos, and we love chaos in the Children's Library because that's what we want to see, the kids engaged and excited and happy to be in our libraries. I've also seen, for this first week, I'll mention the diversity of patronage has been excellent. I've seen patrons from all ages, retirees up in their 80s, 90s, and I did hear that because one of them made it very clear that she was in her late 80s when discussing with staff, but also, of course, our children. And really, I've seen a lot more college age and teens coming in. I suspect that's due to the nearby college getting closer and closer to reopening, their new campus just next door, essentially. So I hope that is a good sign of what is to come as we see new generations discover our newly renovated library here in Escondido. And last but not least, because we didn't have library services, we do not have the typical children's programs or the adult programs. We have a bit of a note from the Pioneer Room as far as operations working well. I do want to shout out to our archivist, Ashley. who normally supervises that building on our behalf, and she was very welcoming and accommodating for our staff that normally is not in the Pioneer Room. And last but not least, as you've mentioned, we've really done our best to increase outreach to all levels of the community. And so that has continued even though the library was moving. We had several major outreach events in July, including a science engineering night at the Children's Museum, and I attended the Downtown Business Association Merchant Mixer, where the mayor and some of our council members were in attendance. Again, it's just a reflection of our movement towards being better engaged and reflective of what the needs and wants and kind of the discussion in the community are. And that is the whole goal of community connections, that outreach element, to ensure that the library is not only visible, but is an engaged member of our community. And I have no hesitation in telling you that I believe that'll continue even after I'm gone. But those are my updates. I'm happy to answer any other questions. And thank you all again for your time, your support, and the work we've done together to make this library so successful.
Thank you, Reno. Just a quick question. Is there an update on the library cards?
We have to put those on pause while
Okay.
we reopened. I will leave Dan, Aspen, and Heidi kind of the tentative designs. Part of it was, as I've mentioned in prior meetings, we wanted to iron out whether the mural artists, both of them, would be willing or able to share their designs in some way. We did get approval at a cost from the mural artist that does the inside murals and the major mural outside, not the new one. I'm still working with Tim, the newest muralist, to see whether he'd be willing to license the work. Once we confirm with Tim, we'll then at least have the two mural artists, an excerpt or collection from their work, probably something from our archival collections, and then that would be a great community engagement tool to get people excited for the next round of, say, the strategic plan or whatever conversations the city would like to lead as a tie-in to the next phase of the library.
Thank you. And I just want to say it's been such a pleasure working with you. You exceeded my expectations, and you have definitely left a mark in our community, and your legacy will live on here for a very long time. And the staff has been lucky to have you as a leader, and I have personally learned so much from you by working with you over these past few years. So I appreciate how much you taught us as you were building a brand new library and, making new programs and making sure everyone had access to learning. You taught it was such a ripple effect of what you have done here. So thank you for the time and your passion that you bring to everything that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ditto to everything that Virginia said.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Reno.
Yeah, thank you for your care and thoughtfulness in these meetings. They will be missed. And just thank you on behalf of the community of Escondido.
Any other questions or comments on director's report? Okay, we'll move on to the trustee library use report. Reports by board members.
All right. I missed the grand reopening due to being on vacation, but I heard it was awesome. So the first thing we did when we got back from vacation was we visited the library, and the entire family enjoyed it. Thought it was super impressive. My stories had now become reality about what was in there. I have one tween and one that's going to be a tween soon, and they kept asking if they can go in the teen space.
Yep.
I said no, not till you're a teen. So I don't know how you enforce that, but I just wanted to throw it out there.
Yep, was at the opening, and which I loved, and I know I did send an email to you and to Robert, just thinking because it was an awesome event, and my kids certainly loved the programming. So mine are littles and are not tweens or teens, but they were in the tween space and loved the Lego build activity at the grand opening, and more visits to come. So thank you, awesome.
Yeah, I thought it went fantastic. The the grand reopening. I also really appreciated like the passion that was like, it was palpable. Everybody was so excited. I really appreciated that the entire council was there and gave comments. And yeah, it was super special. It was really cool to be part of.
Yeah, I also enjoyed the grand reopening, and I strategically invited my friends that I know don't go to the library, but I invited them to come. And so it was really fun to see their faces because they didn't even go to the old one. They're the part of the community that takes advantage of the public library and just knows it's there but doesn't go to it. And now that they saw it and they saw like how open and innovative and like it's just very welcoming, now they're excited to go back. And my mom posted about our day there, and then her friends in Escondido visited and sent us pictures, so it was great. I think that just everything that was chosen just makes it a place that people want to go to, especially like with the snacks and the bookstore, and it was really fun to show everyone that space, so thank you.
Okay, thanks. Moving on to any future agenda items. One note that I did have in a few months' worth of meetings, I think we were previously, previous to knowing her departure, talking about being on track for like annual report in the September meeting. So I'm not sure if that would still be possible or a condensed version or where we now stand on the annual report front, but that's what I have on in terms of my notes for future agenda items. I don't know if anyone else on the board had notes, items. Okay. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 5:51.